So my name is Zach. I'm originally from Oklahoma. I've been in New York City for 6 years now.
My name is Aaron Spence. I'm from Philadelphia, but in a previous life, I've held many positions in education.
So my name is Janet Flores. I'm proudly from Brooklyn, New York, and I want people to know that I love working in education. I think it's one of the greatest professions ever.
Hi, I'm Margo Singalisi. I taught public schools for 33 years, 38 if you count tutoring. I'm also a professional actor.
I attended half of first grade going to a public school in Oklahoma. After the first, I guess it would be semester right after Christmas, my parents decided to pull me out and homeschool me. Even at that time, they said, we're gonna try this for like a little while, and if you like it, then we'll continue, but you always have the option to go back to public school if you so choose. My first day of college was then my first day of like real public school, minus that first half a year of doing first grade.
I primarily attended parochial schools and private universities, so K through 12 was within the archdiocesan system in Philadelphia. And then high school was a private Catholic liberal arts college.
Well, actually, I've attended only public schools, and it was wonderful because in Hoboken, New Jersey, because I did receive scholarships first to my undergrad school, which is now Jersey City State University, and then to NYU for my graduate work. So public education did not fail me. That's why I'm a total proponent.
So I went to a mix of schools. Some schools I went to were predominantly low income and African American Latino communities. And then I went to other schools that were in predominantly white neighborhoods with like a large Eastern European background for middle school. In high school, I went back to a predominantly low income school, Westinghouse, shout out to Jay-Z. And also for college, I went to a PWI, which was SUNY New Paltz, 2 hours upstate, graduated with a BA in journalism and minor in Black Studies.
The topic of education definitely brings something out in me because it was a central topic in our home. In Philadelphia, the public schools were notoriously getting worse. And so my mother, trying to make sure my brother and I had a quality education, enrolled us in the local Catholic school. And we had great experiences. My brother ended up going to a magnet high school, but as I got older, schools got worse. And that's when we had the charter boom, school choice, and all these other kind of things popping up.
Because I think about where life outcomes, and I think about where my community would be. And so when I think about some of the choices that my peers were making, some of the choices I made when I was young, and how they could have went so many different ways, I think about how education plays a big role in that. And how like I had teachers throughout my lifetime that really took a chance and invested in me, and saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so now to be back in their shoes, in a sense, is real empowering for me, and I'm having a good time.
In fact, they say, and I will even quote a Dr. Denise Ravitch, they say that if we can simultaneously fix the ills of poverty and racism as we're fixing education, we would have a magnificent system. Privatizing is not the answer.
That was just
Philly has an interesting makeup. Like I often think a lot about vocational training and college training. I wanted to go to college because I wanted to study Thomas Aquinas, plain and simple.
Oh, wow.
Like outside of that, like I didn't know what the hell I was going to do when I graduated.
Right.
And so I had my grandfather was a carpenter, and so like working with your hands was a thing. But in Philly, you're looking at when I was a kid, most of my friends, their fathers were in the union. Mm-hmm. They were laborers. And so we knew that. However, what was being pushed to us was college. Not necessarily in the school, but from our parents. Mm-hmm. Like the way I think about it is after World War II, the GI Bill gets pushed in. Everyone's going to college now for free. At least white people are going to college for free. And then all the other communities are like, this is the beacon for us to get out. All you're doing is saying a college degree is needed for a low-level job, whether it's in business or anything else. And so now that lie is being pushed 70 years later. Yeah. And what we have is a system that is oversaturated with schools. All those small liberal arts colleges are about to be put out, but they had to change their curriculum based on the high school feeding system that's coming in so they could compete for it. And so what I end up seeing, so I worked in both university admissions and as administrator in high school. And what you see is it's a battle of power and equity. The communities that need the resources have the voices, but they don't have the capital. And so for example, West Philadelphia being gentrified over the last 15 years, all of the people that come in and move and buy, they're like, we love it, this is great. But the moment the kids turn 8, what do? They run to the suburbs. They move them to private school. And so what ends up happening is we get a financial drain, a brain drain, and on top of that, to entice people to come in and develop, you're giving them tax abatement. So we're losing an entire tax base that is building up the city that had us take on a significant amount of debt that is then going to saddle all of the poor communities in Philadelphia with this debt for the next 2 generations. And so you're looking at power versus equity. And so now what are people saying? We need people to join these union jobs. My buddy is a manager at a port. The union position to sweep the floor pays $35 an hour.
Wow.
I want to sweep floors for $35 an hour, right? Because once you get in, it's guaranteed overtime. And so you're going to make on average $35 an hour. And if you end up being a machine operator, crane operator, lift operator, you're making a ton of money and you don't even have to know how to read.
Right. And the thing is, you're not working that long.
No, like maybe if you're doing some of the harder stuff like being a longshoreman, you're going to wear your body out. But you're making $80,000 a year at 22.
Wow.
Like so we have this we see it in Philadelphia. And so what they tried to do was the charter schools would get a union to back them, but then that's kind of corrupt. And then you get like this independent money funneled by a union. That's corrupt. And so like school choice, depending on where you are, like rural communities, I don't know how that would play out.
Choice.
And then, and I don't think there is choice in general. Like you get a charter school pop up, they got a new building, they get new teachers that are actually paid a little bit more, not necessarily well. They're being worked to the bone still, but you feel this sense of newness and hope. And so you're throwing a kid in this school, but then when they want to go to college, what happens? Oh, that's a new school. We don't know how they rate when you're going for college admission. So we can't admit you. And you see those kind of things. So then it all just goes right back to power and equity at the community level. And I think rural communities are probably better positioned by and large in the country than cities. Because there's less people, they just need to organize. And once they do that, they can get more. But like in Philadelphia, you got 1 million people screaming and hollering. It's so hard to figure out how to get in without being super corrupt.
What about the idea of online education?
I'm all about it.
Okay, so like just hear me out for a moment because I'm thinking like you've been like, and there's Skillshares, there's Linda's, there's Khan Academy, there's I don't know how many other things there are, right? Where tenured or very well experienced educators are creating their curriculum online. Okay, so they are legitimate. It's just like on the internet. And anybody anywhere can take advantage of these classes. So if you're a Chinese kid that's learning English, you could take this Khan Academy class too. Just like this kid in Oklahoma can, and just like this kid in like San Mateo, like let's say. So what if we're in these poorer communities and let's hope that there's a public library at minimum. What if because money obviously is the thing, right? So like if money is funneled into the public library and we have an influx of computers and now we can have kids that come in and take their courses there as opposed to having to go to a school where it's not going to be funded. So it's going to like become dilapidated in a few years. The charter school pops up, it pops down, it falters. Like could that be an interesting intermediary option?
But
the internet is going to be the future, period. So like everyone's going to be learning online. For those of you that are brick and mortar people, I hear you and I love you.
No, I've done it.
You know what I mean? Like this is how it's going to
chalk anymore in school.
Correct. You have the smart board and it's like, what about that?
So I worked with a group that opened a school that was like that. It was online, delivered with teachers to reinforce what they were learning. I'm a big fan of that because you still need the expertise in the room. Like your parents were trained teachers. So if they didn't know the answers, they knew how to get them. So like you still need some sort of guide in the room.
I agree.
The problem I run into with online education is in that model, like the library model, you're presupposing that the communities that need the education have the infrastructure to support online learning.
Sure.
And so it's like my library in the neighborhood I grew up, they just got internet, like real reliable internet. They had a dial-up computer and we could go there and hang out on the computer, but they just got reliable internet. Internet's out today. You can't do your work. And so now you've got a whole community of people in that area who are like, we need to apply for jobs and we need to learn online too. And so going back to the equity thing, it's like now we have to figure out where do we put the resources to get the infrastructure for the thing? Because if it's not called a school, it's still a place of learning that requires the support of tax dollars that people don't want to give to education because they want more money in their paycheck.
Can I just bring up something that's going to blow your mind? Because I agree with what you're saying.
I'm interested in mind blowing.
Okay, I do it all the time, and you're an expert at it. Okay, here's so weird. I was doing some tutoring. I retired from teaching about 800 years ago, but anyway, not really, a few years ago. Yeah, there it is, just a couple. But anyways, so I missed the kids and I wanted to tutor someone.
Sure.
You know what I found out? This blew my mind because I love technology. Oh. He complained because he felt that there was too much media.
Yeah.
Too much media. He also said he didn't like the Kindle. He liked the feel of a book. I was like, whoa.
That's my kid.
Yeah.
He didn't like it. And
it's a movement.
Yeah.
It's a movement.
It's like, I was shocked that he was going back to old school. Because
my mind is a little bit blown.
I would say none of my, I live and work on computers just daily. I'm the person that goes to the eye doctor and they're like, how many hours in front of a screen? I'm like, 80, I don't know, but I also think that there's something with the online schooling, because you were talking about my parents supporting me, being behind the scenes kind of thing. But I also think that it's something about how you get raised in that online schooling, when there's not someone there to facilitate, and even with my parents there to facilitate, I still had to be the one to be self-driven enough to go do work. And I think that somewhat our schooling system doesn't encourage people to be self-driven. It all gets handed to you and says, here you go, here's your assignment. Yeah. So I think the idea of having an online school, like what you're saying in a library setting or something, could work. But it's gonna take almost like a movement of being able to teach kids to go learn.
Be accountable.
And be accountable. Because it is, I work with so many people who are freelancers and they're the general stereotype of freelancers is they're always behind. They don't have their shit together. You know what I mean? And they're always they can't stick to a schedule, all those kinds of things. And I'm I don't fit that model, but I grew up in a way that my mom was listen, you got 2 assignments to do today, so you better get them done.
And that's that.
And that's that. And it was here, go. You have to do it and figure out how it's going to get done. Come to me if you need help, but otherwise you're on your own. And so I think that in our schooling system, that's not really taught as much. You expect your kid is going to go to a school, they're going to go to a teacher, and the teacher is going to teach them. They're going to take that information and they're going to come back.
So parenting is hands off at this time.
Exactly.
So then, the question that always pops in my head then is where did that shift occur in education, right? So this conversation about being self-driven would not have occurred through the 1960s and 70s.
No.
What changed? That's what I'm curious
Technology.
about. But what about it?
I think the implementation of technology in learning, because, we were talking about that kid part 2 of mind blowing. I had to teach him his high school curriculum. I loved everything they gave me. I loved all the media. I was like, man, this is incredible. And he's complaining about it. Yeah. I think the reliance on technology and all of these different videos, I think it changed then.
I agree, because the first thing that comes to my mind when you ask this question is, I had to take keyboarding. And I don't know, it's just the first thing that came to my mind. And I thought, I guess if I have to take this, everybody has now decided that this is going to be the future that I'm going to be living. I'm going to be in front of a computer no matter what it is that I'm doing. So I better get what was it? I better get that done right.
JKL and the
And having that instead of handwriting or the home ecs or the whatever. And then coupled with that, because also what I thought of is, I was working in Park Slope in a yoga studio and in Brooklyn. And the parents that came in with their kids at the 4:00 hour right after school, their kids didn't have an hour that wasn't accounted for.
Oh, that's so true.
And so I guess that makes me think of technology and the computer, and also hovering helicopter parents at the same time.
Good point.
And I wonder if that coincides. That's my answer, at least. I think that was the time. And so what time was that? When 05 to 08. I graduated high school in 08, so in and around that time, because that's when I had to take a lot of computer classes, is what I recall. And my parents weren't hoverboards. I mean, my mom was a teacher, so she was like, you got it, it's fine. But other parents were too much. Calling teachers up, yelling at teachers. Okay, and we're in Bergen County, so like, you know, the whole county is an uppity county, and certainly where I grew up in Hackensack was not even uppity. So just like to have parents like that was like, oh no.
I think you're bringing up a really good point.
Like what
about
is
that
the point of parents in education, and also
I
should
think,
there be more?
That's exactly, because what he was, you know, kind of jumping off of your point. I think what's missing with education is that like we don't talk about like how adults are actually educated and how we grew up, and then taking that into account and evaluating. Because I found like a lot of the times like it's not, if the children are struggling, 9 out of 10 times the parents are struggling with them.
Yeah.
So like how do we then address that issue, and
Correct.
like how do we support them and give them more like, you know, whatever it is, even if it's like remedial like learning or remedial reading, you know, it may like maybe not phrasing it that way, because you hear remedial, it's like, oh, man, I'm dumb.
But
right?
like the night classes. Like,
Yeah, you know, like night
whatever.
classes, or even like, hey, you know, come learn with your student. Like this is, you know, like schools will do curriculum night and like, okay, this is what we're going over, but then we don't ever actually say, do you understand like what this is, you know, mom, dad, grandparent, whoever, do you understand like what this means, like what your child is going to be learning? Do you have questions? Will you be able to support them when they take their homework home? Are you going to know like how to, you know, help them when we're not around? Yeah. You know, because, you know, I know from my, you know, my own experience that, you know, I can only go but so far. You know, as educators, we can only go but so far. So I think like also addressing and like allowing more resources and access for parents to get involved in education is definitely key.
Without being a hoverboard, but being involved and like taking some onus.
When I taught inner city, do you teach inner city?
Yeah.
Right,
Okay. So the problem there was, although I found them so incredibly embracing and so loving and so wonderful, but they had to work because they couldn't
had
afford
no
it.
time.
And there was a lot of language barrier. It wouldn't. I think those parents would have loved to have been involved and educated with their child. They just didn't. I had the opposite problem.
Obviously.
And then parents not being able to even go to a school to support their kid when they get like an award of the month.
Right.
So
that like starts to drain on the kids as well. Like all these different like little things, it takes a toll on the kids, it takes a toll on the school community. And so those are the things we need to really address. So, and then kind of going off of your point about the technology, I think as humans, we just love like to be able to touch things.
Yeah.
And so
I have all my things here ready for
you
know, like it's just what we love. Like when we first, like when I was first coming up, like I had like the first like DOS computers and like having to do the floppy disk for like, and like now,
actual floppy.
You know, like I learned cursive, I learned like how to, you know, the ASDF and stuff. But then now I have kids that are like, oh, what's this? And they look at me writing in cursive like, oh, I want to learn that.
Right.
But they took that out of schools. And I'm like, and it's crazy because I just learned this yesterday, but like people that take notes in cursive in college actually retain twice as much information. Because they're writing it faster, you know, because the words link and everything. So like, you know, it's a hunger for like things that, you know, like kids know like what they want out of education. And so what we really need to take more, you know, like listening to them more like, oh, okay, you want to learn cursive? I'm excited to teach that. Like, oh, y'all want to learn? Cool, I got you. You know, but then like I know that's not something an opportunity that everybody in every school gets to do. And it's unfortunate because kids get stripped. Then they're sitting in front of a screen all day. You know, and the only time they get to touch something is like a test or, you know.
But also, could you, because of Common Core is still in effect, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Like I'm like, I've been gone for a minute.
It's independently adopted.
Yikes.
It depends.
But my question is like, if you want to do that as an educator, knowing your, you know, students, you know them face to face and what they want and what they want to see. You don't have the like creative license to take your
on paper. On paper, I have to do A, B, C, D, right? But me as an educator, and this is something I tell people, if you really want to be in this field, you have to love kids and you have to give your all.
So true.
I make it my business to find ways to give them what they want.
Okay.
Because I know what it's like to somebody to say no to somebody. And you know, like that effect will take, you know, like that's something that will scar a kid for life. You know, like we don't know. That brain that I said no to could have like then turned around and found a cure for cancer. Or they could have figured out like, you know, new infrastructure for the American, you know, whatever, right? Whatever genius thing that is in their brain that hasn't been birthed yet. So I find my ways. I know that there's quality educators that do that, but they're not supported. And that's the biggest problem that we have. And to your question about Common Core, I had no problem with it per se. Like I like the structure and the uniformity of it all, because I think like that is something that education, particularly in America,
diagnostically,
needed,
right on paper.
But, on paper, like okay, yes, by third grade you should know how to do ABC, right?
Sure.
But then my thing was some of the methodology that was being taught to the kids on how to use it, and especially when it came to math, I was like, this is atrocious. Why are they going through these 15 steps to figure out 15 times 2.
Okay.
They could just, instead of they break it apart like, 10 times 5. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
it's too much.
And then the kids get frustrated because it takes so long. And then they're thinking about the time because they're looking at the clock. And then they're like, oh my God, I gotta do this. No. And I see it all the time. And it frustrates the kids to the point that they don't want to learn. And what education in America right now is doing, it's making children not want to learn, it's making teachers not want to teach, it's making parents just not, not unaware and aware of what's going on. And the administrators get frustrated because they're not hitting the results that they want. So everybody's being frustrated and want to quit across the board. And that it kills a lot of passion, it kills creativity, it kills genius.
It's true. And can I just piggyback on that?
I was just,
Sorry,
I just felt that.
What I just saw there, that was beautiful. Yeah. Because when I went back in, because I was missing the kids and I was tutoring, what I did notice was the low morale of the teachers. Like you're on fire, man. And I bet those kids adore you. Even your look, I hate to say it, everything. They're loving it. They're loving it.
Yeah.
So that's what I noticed about it. And that's why, in a way, online, as much as I love technology, but that relationship.
That should never go away.
Yeah, the school I work with, that piece of having the human there is the deciding factor why parents would put them there. Yeah. Pennsylvania has one really big online charter school, and any kid can enroll in it, and you work from home. Yeah, it's terrible. It's a terrible online academy because you don't have the support of a real teacher. So for example, if I'm learning math, I'm learning the times table. I go in today and this is my instructor in the lesson, in the video lesson. When I reach out for support today, I get Amy. When I reach out for support tomorrow, I get Brad.
Man.
And so the kids go, I'm done. Right. I want to learn from Amy again or the person in the video. Yeah. And so you have a lot of inconsistency and you can't build rapport, you can't build trust.
No good.
The other thing I wanted to add is one of the biggest problems I have with Common Core, even though it's you can now opt out of it. I think Race to the Top is done. Yeah, so states
you can opt out.
States opt out.
Oh, good.
When Common Core went into place, only like 40 states did it, and I think only like 20 now do it, maybe even less.
Good.
And so because it was like an incentive with Race to the Top in the Obama administration, and that bottomed out when they reauthorized it in 15. But one of the big things is, what is the purpose of the curriculum? Because no one's talking about why it's being developed. It's like, we're last place in math or whatever it is, wherever we rank, or English or this. And it's like, what are we training students for? And we're no longer training them for life. We're training them for college. We're not training them to exist in this world.
So bad.
Exactly. And so the workforce, so education always is supposed to back into what the workforce needs. The problem is you don't know what the workforce needs until it's too late. Yeah. And so now with the move to automation, you need people with more soft skills and more like people skills and all these other things that they're not getting in the school system. And now they're like, STEM. And it's like, no, we needed that 25 years ago. And so what ends up happening is you're in a situation where you're like, on paper, I got no problem following the structure. But when the kid wants to learn handwriting or how to memorize the times table, when I found out kids weren't memorizing that anymore, it blew my fucking mind. Like, I had to sit there and memorize this big 12 by 12 chart.
In the back of the composition.
That's right.
I literally broke that down to my student. I'm like, you don't know it? Open your notebook and this is how I learn.
All those tools were there.
That's it.
Every night.
Memorize.
And then
memorize.
That's it. That's what we're talking about.
You didn't know?
So,
it's half composition.
In the back it
was right there.
It had everything.
And it had the ruler. All of it.
Time. Yes. It had like everything you needed as far as math was right there. I'm sorry, I don't mean to yell, but
it's all right.
You loud and you passionate. I love it.
He loves composition books.
Back of that notebook, and it's like the kids have that notebook, but they don't even know. Open it up and study it.
Yeah. I have my composition notebook. I want to show it to you. That was writing it before.
Like I remember the third grade. We had.
She's gonna get it.
We had a specific one that was printed out. I'll never forget. Ms. Anthony made us cut it out and paste it in our book. And every week we had to blank it out.
Right.
And she would drill us.
Brilliant.
And we had to know it. And so now it's like, you don't know your science.
Yes,
What are
that's
we
fine.
doing? Oh,
This
there
is
it is.
This is what we all
I wanna see it.
had.
I wanna see what
It had all these tools for us
Yeah.
to
It's like
use
2
in
times
school.
2, 4 times.
What do
All of
they
it.
do now?
Never,
Like because
never seen it. This is
well,
no.
Yeah, the number it's a number tree, and then the way I've seen it was that. So I'm going back to my example, 15 times 2.
Show the people the notebook.
I was deprived.
Okay, how was 15?
Here it is.
I was
75.
deprived.
So then they'll split the 10, and you 10 times 2, and then 5 times 2, and then you go back and add the 2 together.
No way.
And so like that was one way, but that's one of the simpler ways that I've seen. I've seen it much
more
worse.
complex. I got
Yeah.
a question for you because you guys are still in it right now.
All right, sorry.
Oh,
V, it's your show.
My bad.
Go.
No, I got nothing. I just was like
All right, here's
surprised
my
you didn't
question.
know.
All right, we're all texting all the time.
I'm kind of mad that we don't have the full ruler.
I
in
know.
this one,
Yeah.
but
I'm the text queen. Okay, here's the deal. So now the kids are texting
Yeah.
all the time, right?
yeah.
But grammatically, how are you teaching proper grammar?
the thing is that, and this is my own personal opinion, is that technology has like forced us as a people, not because it's not even just the students, it's like grown adults texting me HRW. I'm like, what the hell is this?
What is that?
You know, like, how are you?
How
Like,
are-
yeah.
Right.
Oh,
A mess.
yeah.
I use full grammar in text.
Yeah, like I said,
Same.
like I'm like,
Same.
you know, I saw like
Yeah.
contractions, but anyway.
Yeah,
So
that's
like,
about it.
you know.
Yeah.
So what happens is that like technology, because we're so on the go,
Yeah. Right,
it's
we're
just
too
like
fast.
everything gotta be fast.
We're so
everything gotta be
busy.
quick. Everything
Yeah.
has to fit within this box. You know, even down to Twitter, it's like, you know, I think Twitter was really the beginning of the dumbing down of America, because like you had to shrink everything into 140 characters
Yeah.
before they added in like, you know,
280 or
extended or
What
you know,
grammar
video
what
or
grammar rule am I gonna break
Yeah,
to
right,
make my,
right.
make my word
you know,
count?
just to make, you know, make whatever your thought fit, you know? So
Yeah.
now, you know, and then you translate that to like how people like communicate in text and, you know, even on the phone. Like I have people like, you know, I say it out loud myself. Like I have BRB as I walk out.
LOL.
And like people understand what I mean.
Be right back.
Oh,
right?
okay, I'm sorry.
But like, you know, that's,
We're still gapping here. Like
it's become a new, like, it's,
Oh,
yeah, I
I
wish
didn't do
I was
that.
like things sometimes. Like, but like that's how like we're becoming more of like a simplistic, and it's a good and bad thing, because in a way it's like its own new language, right?
Yeah.
Because the language that we're used to, or you're used to, she's used to, right, is not the same as it was like 40 years ago,
Oh, no
30
way.
years ago. Like
No
there's
way.
certain words, and like, you know, you can look at even old comic books, and I'm like, oh, this is a dash. I mean, it meant something totally different than what it does now.
Yeah.
So, like, what it is that we're forcing a new language and we're creating a new language, but the problem is we're not backing why they still need to know the old one. And why they still need to know all of these things. And, you know, maybe we should start, and maybe that's something I didn't even think of. Maybe that is something that we start implementing as a course. It's like phone conversation, not conversation, etiquette, right? Like if you're texting your boss, you don't text your boss like, you know, in acronyms.
It's just
and,
those
you
are
know,
things
like
that
slang and
shouldn't
things
be
like
taught
that,
in school. Your
right?
parents or your guardian or whoever
Yeah.
should be taking some
We
onus
should,
there.
But then, like, you know, everybody's pulled in 50 different directions. You know, we have parents that work like, you know, 8 to 6.
Yeah.
You know, they gotta, you know, come back, pick up their kid if their kid is lucky enough to even get after school. Right?
Right.
Then it's like, you know, the stress of like, okay, and everybody's being told something. Like, all day the kids are being told something by somebody.
Yeah,
Then your
that's
parents
true.
are being told something by
Yeah,
somebody every
yeah.
day because we're all working for somebody. Somebody has a boss above.
Right.
So it's like we're all being told. And by the time everybody gets home, it's like nobody wants to have a conversation about sex. Nobody wants to have a conversation about what they did in school. It's like, all
Valid.
right, you okay? You alive? Did you eat anybody? No. Okay, eat. Do your homework. Go to sleep.
Right.
You know, and rinse, repeat the whole
Sad.
cycle.
But to talk on that, there was one point that you made in there, and I think talking about like seeing that, I'm like seeing that chart for the first time.
That was a wonderful moment. That was a magical moment. Yes.
but like in
so
talking
sweet.
about things
What's the
that
front cover?
you learn, like you're talking about like kids getting
that's
frustrated
good.
learning math. And like math was like a huge struggle for me, like always has been. It
Me
just wasn't
too.
something that just didn't make sense
Nope.
to me. And so like, but the way my parents broke it down, like I remember my mom when I was like 14, I got like my first like checking account. And I was like, she's like, all right, if you're gonna have a checking account, you get to learn how to balance a checkbook. That's how this is gonna happen. But like we were talking about this before we all started the interview and stuff, and like we're like, no, like this. Like, we don't learn things like that in school.
No.
And so I think kids have this innate ability to be able to be learning things like, why do I have to put this in this box to make this thing come out at the end? Be like, all right, well, like if you want to know how money works, which you're going to have to know how money works, you're still going to learn how math works.
Yeah.
But like, you know, like learning how triangles all meet together and are all magically symmetrical on one side in certain situations is not going to help you once you get out of school unless you're going to go down that road and into a field where triangles actually have a pertinence in your day-to-day work, which is going to be a very small field.
Correct.
Yeah.
But like it also goes into like, I have a friend who's in aerospace engineering. So like tons of super, super complex stuff. But he's still, so much training has to happen on the job by the time he's done. And so it's like you're seeing it all the way from like low education where you're like, all right, we're going to learn these common core things and you're going to go through these steps and you're going to learn this stuff because we say it's important. It's not going to be applicable probably even when you get to high school, and it's probably not applicable when you get to college.
Right.
And then when you get into college, then you're like, all right, now you got to go through Comp 1. And you got to go through American history, and you got to go through the same. You're just checking more boxes. So you're like, you don't even get to your sophomore year before you start taking courses that are for your field or whatever it is. If you've been able to decide by that point, and they funneled you into something that you want to be, so then it's like, okay, so then you have 2 more years to do what you're gonna do, and it's like, okay, like you have 2 years really then in college to be trained for after you've been in school your entire life, and now they're saying, okay, now this is gonna be tailored to. You want to be a mechanic or whatever, that would be vocational, but like anything, an engineer, you're like, okay, well, here's your 2 years, like if you want to go on and do more schooling after that, then it's actually focused on what you're doing and you can do your master's and it's all focused on that one thing. But why does it not start like that early on, or you're not given the option to start that?
Thank you guys so much for sticking with us this entire second season. We will be nowhere without your likes, subscribes, comments, views, everything, the whole thing. So stay tuned. We got something else in the works for you. Make sure you listen to our podcast if you were unable to watch some of these. And particular thanks goes out to Jess Schwartz for the locations, Colton, Rachel, Erin, my mom, Kristen, everybody gets a shout out these days. So thanks for watching this episode on education. And as always, we do still want to hear your comments down below. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I know you're not sick of hearing that one. See you next time.